Divas, welcome back to my channel where we talk about books and I let you know which ones are worth your time and which ones you can leave on the shelf. I wanted to do a wrap up of all of the books that I read in January. And listen, I read relatively fast. Some other people on the internet read so fast I can't even comprehend it. But January had to have been at least a year long because I do not understand how I was able to read as many books as I did. It truly doesn't feel for me physically possible. So I just want to give that caveat going in. And I want to honor the fact that people read 5 times as many books as I read this month. And I also want to hold space for people who had time to pick up one and are maybe not finished with it yet, because we live in a wild and crazy world with a very real literacy crisis. So picking up one, I consider that a win. And if you didn't pick up one, watch the video of my February to be read list and pick up one of those and we'll read it together, okay? All right, let's dive in. So I wanted to talk about these books in order that I read them, and then at the end we can kind of do like a little bit of a ranking if that works. So I started the month finishing Murakami's The City and Its Uncertain Walls. I did start reading it over the holidays, and the holidays were just busy as they always are, and I didn't get to finish it. I also don't think I finished it because over the holidays because it was a little slow. So I did finish it in January, but it was fine. I'm a huge Murakami fan. I really loved his Killing Commendatore, and I thought that 1Q84 was really special. There are several others of his that I've read too that I really enjoyed, but 1Q84 I think was really special. It's kind of this 1,000 page, I think, something like that, epic, and it's like split into 3 parts. It's cool. But this just didn't do it for me. It was originally conceived years and years ago as a short story, and he took that short story and developed it into this full novel. My understanding is that he wrote the short story years and years and years ago. I think it was the very beginning of his career, and he was never happy with it. So it has never been published in like a work since. And this is kind of his response to that. He didn't want it published because he didn't like it and didn't feel like it was complete. And so he used this as the opportunity to complete it. I wanted to see more from it. It had some like very quintessential Murakami isms, you know what I mean? There's a young woman who tends to be pined for. There's always something with the ears too. But I don't think it worked. The beginning was really slow and then it started to pick up, but then it kind of lost its way again. I I just feel like if you are a Murakami fiend and need to read all of his work, sure, go with God, fine. But if you're not, I would absolutely pick up one of his others. I think 1Q84 would be great. I've also heard really great things about, I think it's Kafka on the Beach, maybe. And I'm considering throwing that on my reading list for AAPI month, I think in May. So stay tuned for that, and we can talk more about that one. But there are some others that have really good reputations. I think Wild Sheep Chase was actually great and would be worth looking into, but this one was just kind of a mess. I don't think it was. Lacked what makes him special to me, which is sad to say and kind of bums me out. But I'm not reaching for this, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Okay, the next one that I read was You Dreamed of Empires. And I was intrigued by the cover. I love this kind of chartreuse green. So it was always vaguely on my radar, but I read it because it was on the New York Times top 5 fiction books of 2024. Y'all, it made me wonder if I am actually part of the literacy crisis, because I don't think I really understood what was happening. And listen, do I know what was happening? Yes, I know what was happening. I understood the plot from a 30,000-foot view, but it was weird. It didn't work. It didn't make sense. And I didn't get like the intricacies of a lot of the plot because I don't think it was delivered in a way that was successful, period, or that was like easily consumable. I don't, maybe it was the translation. Maybe I don't get it. And there's always normally like two on that New York Times list that I'm just like in total disagreement with. And this was one of them this year. I I think that there were so many other like special pieces of literature that they could have included, which to be honest might have been why I disliked it even more because it was like the number of books we could have chosen this year to include on this list and like this one, it just felt like maybe they like think that they're smart. I don't know. It just the names were wild. I think that was like maybe supposed to be funny. It just they were all I think like on some sort of hallucinogen, but like it didn't go far enough to like really feel extreme in a way that like felt like a literary device. It just kind of felt muddled. Does that make sense? So it's like it didn't employ what it seemed to be claiming that it was doing successfully. It just kind of was like somewhere in the middle. The one thing I did like was that I felt like every time there were women present, that was when we got clarity. I felt like there was like clear communication and I felt like the plot became like into like came into very clear focus. So I thought that was a really interesting commentary, and I think that was done very successfully. There's also one like little scene where like all the soldiers are like bathing and like it's kind of hot. But other than that, and like listen, you don't need to read the whole book for that. You can find that in plenty of other books. So unfortunately, I wouldn't recommend that either. But I would. I liked I liked it less than the Murakami. I like the Murakami a little better, I guess. That's not saying much, but from love. From love. The next one, because I needed a little bit of a break. I knew the Murakami was gonna, require a lot of mental energy. I knew that You Dreamed of Empires was probably gonna, take a little bit out of me, especially because I'd heard it was a little crunchy. So I took a road less traveled for me, and I looked at a Reese's book club pick. And I said, you know what? I need a good mystery. And I need Queen Diva Reese to take me there. And so I read First Sly Wins. Listen, I think all literature should really kind of be judged against its own genre, if I'm being really honest. Like, is a like fun mystery that is very easily consumable that's like a little thrillery, should that be judged against like a Pulitzer Prize winning like literary fiction title? No. That's the way I see literature, and I think that like these like firm delineations are good in my opinion because we can appreciate art for different things, right? And different like because they serve different purposes. And the purpose that this book I think intended to serve and successfully served was very enjoyable. I thought that the plot moved quickly. It moved us right along, which is what you want from these books. I felt like it was written well in a way that was like very consumable and easy to digest, which is what you want from these books. I felt like the characters were likable and a little intriguing, which is what we want from these books. There's like a twist, which we love. I will say, at one point in time, there were so many little like knits and like little like twisty things that it felt like a bread tie, like those ties on the end of like a loaf of bread, and it was like twisted like just too much. It's like just like two or three too many like tight like twists, so that like to unravel it to like really map it out and understand it felt like just like one level past what I wanted to do. But that's like being very nitpicky. I think what it set out to do, it did, and it was very successful. And I had a really, really lovely time, truly. There's also, you all should go look up the author, Ashley Elston, on TikTok. And it may be on Reese's Book Club's TikTok page, but she talks through her process and she shows this like giant map of like the plot and the characters, and it was her way of keeping everything like like easily like laid out in a way, so she knew she wasn't going to screw it up. And the like cool things she talks about too, about like there's a lot of driving in it, and so she talks a lot about like wanting to make sure that it was like realistic that you could travel to these places in that period of time. I thought that was really neat, and so I think that's worth going to check out too, just to like understand her process a little bit better. But yeah, 10 out of 10. I mean, like, again, for like, we're judging the literature for like what it intended to do. It absolutely accomplished what it intended to do. I really loved it. It was really great. Okay, this next one, y'all, I was influenced by the internet. I was influenced by the internet, and I I think I'm happy that I was. And that influence was Fourth Wing. I know I'm so late to the party. I'm like 3 books late to the party because didn't Onyx Storm come out like this month, like 2 weeks ago? So yeah, listen. First and foremost, that protagonist, if you all have read this, you know, she she was too H word for too long. Okay, like we can just say it. Okay, like she needed to find some sort of outlet for that sooner than when she did in this book. That said, I think that the story is incredible. I think that it builds this like amazing tension. Sorry, my nose is like so dry because of the winter weather. I'm like over it already, and we've got like at least another month, 2 months of this. Um, so I think that the story is great. I loved like the dragon element. Like I'm such a sucker for that. It to me from like a world building and like a kind of like genre and like this like fantasy place, but like grounded enough in reality that you felt like they were like real people, you know what I mean? It's very akin in its way to like the Hunger Games and kind of like the Harry Potter of it all, like in that space. For me, anyways. Listen, do I think that those did it better? Yeah, but like it is like of a piece, in my humble opinion. Now, that said, is it a good book? No. The first like 100 pages are so overwritten. The character development is like so like minor compared to the plot, and the plot is moving at this like propulsive rate, and the character development I think is like stagnant for so much of it. Like that doesn't work for me. Like they've got to have some sort of pairing with that. That said, I do think there were some like inspirational things about it, and I think that like the way she like wrote like the strength of the protagonist was like really inspiring. I love the love story, like will she, won't she? They did this is the guy. The guy's gotta like we had to let the like is he gonna kill her thing go earlier than we did. But like I know you know what I mean. So like those are the elements I think that kind of take away from it as like a book, and also like the final 100 pages I think, or final 150 pages, it like loses its way again, and it starts to get like a little like disjointed and a little hard to follow. But the middle chunk, great. I feel like the type of writing is again like what you expect from what this book was setting out to do. It's very direct. It's taking us down this like plot driven you know journey. It's great, but as a work, it's stuff to work on. But the story's amazing. So do I regret reading it? No. I've heard that the second book is not good. Have you all read it? I need to figure that out because like I want to know what happens, and I heard the third book is amazing. It's just like it's hard to like commit to like a I think the second one's like 600 pages, 650 pages. Like if it's not going to be good. So I don't know. On the fence. I'm also thinking that next month I might read or listen to my first audiobook. So that might be the first audiobook that I do. I don't know. Stay tuned. TBD. But yeah. And then I'll like actually read like the physical copy of the third one. Who knows? But yeah, so that's how I would describe my experience and suggest it to others. Like if you want to read it because everybody's talking about it, yes. Just go into it knowing the writing is inconsistent, like the character development is like not great, but it's a great story. It's such a great story, and I would argue that that's what it's setting out to do. And so in that way I do think it accomplished its goals. So yeah. Okay, this next one. This was for a book club, and we're going to talk about it with its like the part one, I guess, or like the precursor of the book. So I read the sequel. I did not like it. And the further I get away from it, the less I liked it. And, or however, it did make me like the plot, which was like the first book in this like 2-book, from my understanding, series, much more. And I appreciated the plot so much more after reading the sequel. So, that's the pro that came out of this book. I just, I think if you're interested in like this kind of like mystery and like the whole literary world of it all, like read the plot. Read the plot. I'm sure it's going to be turned into some sort of like television something. The Undoing, that HBO series, was hers, and it's based on one of her books. I think the book is by a different name. But yeah, so and I really enjoyed that series. I thought it was great. So yeah, I would read the plot. I would skip the sequel. I don't think it adds enough to the plot. I think the first 150 pages or something like that, maybe even 200, it was just kind of like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Why? Like, you assume that I care more than I did. And like, the protagonist in this sequel is like the bad guy, basically, from the plot. So like, what, and I feel like she does things to try to make her sympathetic, and I'm like, I don't understand. I didn't understand. And like the things that like the time and attention spent on what happens in like the first 150, 200 pages, it was like, I don't care. And then the big twist at the end, I felt like she should have known that. I feel like she should have known that. And because I don't want to give anything away, but like, she should have known. And if she didn't know, it should have been very clear to the reader that she didn't know. Because the author projected the like twist so far out in the plot, it did feel like she had thought through everything so completely that I like trusted the journey and still had a good time, even though I knew what was going to happen. Where this, it felt like there were no breadcrumbs, and in fact the breadcrumbs led me to believe that the opposite almost like outcome should have happened. Like, the protagonist should have taken control of the situation because she should have known that like the twist was there. And if not, like, and if there was a reason for her not to have known the twist, the author should have told us that. And I would argue, like, there's an element where we talk about the bed. There's this bed in this book. She beats us over the head with the bed. Like, why are we talking about the bed when we could have talked about the twist to let us know, like, she doesn't know this. She doesn't know this. And instead it's like, boop, bloop, bloop. I didn't like it. It didn't land. The further away from it I could get from it, like, I just really disliked it. But it did make me like the plot more. So if you're into like a good mystery that is, about the literary world, I think picking up the plot is absolutely worth it. And yeah, and maybe it's gonna be turned into a TV show. So like, great. Pick it up before it does. All right. This next one was a fascinating read for me. It was The Empusium. I have been dying to read something by Olga Tokarczuk. I'm really sorry. I should have looked up how to say her name. That's really in poor taste of me. But she was the Nobel Prize winner a couple years ago, and I had started her Books of Jacob, but it is just a hunger and a half, and is very Baroque in the way that it was approached. And it didn't come into my life at the right time, but it was fascinating. I was reading it in Central Park, and this woman came up to me and she was like, oh my God, I love this book. She was like, read it, stick with it. I'm sorry to this woman, I did not, but I still have it, and I am planning to pick it back up because The Empusium, ladies and gentlemen. Now listen, halfway through the book, I was like, what is this doing? Where are we going? Why am I here? And then I got to the final 50 pages. Those final 50 pages changed my entire mind about the entire book, and I think it's brilliant. It's for sure my favorite read from January, and is like, these other books have like a hill to climb to be like a better book for me, for like this, my favorites of the year. It set the standard. And if you are going to read it, which I suggest you do, you have to commit to finishing it, which I know is tricky. So you got to give yourself some time and like maybe set like reading goals for yourself to get through it. Meaning like I'm going to read X number of pages today, I'm going to read X number of pages tomorrow, and then just trust that it's going to come together. Because if you just read the first like 250 pages, you're not going to like it. And I would get why you would abandon it. I think it's 250. Yeah. I get why you would abandon it. I totally understand. And honestly, the only reason I finished it was because I was like, I want to finish her work. I trust the prize, and I trust like her. I trust her as an author, maybe ignorantly because I didn't really know why, but it was just because I think the writing was so beautiful, maybe. And so I trusted her, and I'm so glad that I did because this was exceptional. And it's fascinating. There's a lot of misogyny in the book, but it's presented in a way that, in my opinion, is like very intentional. It's like the author's a woman. It's like so overt and extreme that it's a commentary on male misogyny. And in the back of the book, the author's note, she lists the men from history what is it like summarized is the wrong word. I want to use her words because like she's brilliant. Paraphrased. She paraphrased text from a group of men, and they are men throughout history, and they are men that we all interact with very regularly in life. And it was fascinating. And I think that is just like part of her brilliance. And that's part of kind of like the bow that ties it all together. It's a lot about duality. I would say, like, going into it, just think about the duality of all of that, like God, the devil, lucidity versus like, the brain taking a break versus what is like, what is real, what is not real, about ourselves, even like, well, who are we? All of it, men, women, hence the misogyny. So yeah, I think it's absolutely worth it, but make a commitment to me to finish it if you pick it up, please. And then you can have an opinion, and then you can hate it, but you can't not finish it and hate it because it's not complete. Okay. And I get why you would, but and I know I'm being over the top right now. Okay. All right. One of my last reads of the month was The Three Lives of Kate K, which was the Reese's Book Club pick for this month. And I wanted to read that because I had such a good time with First Light Wins. The further I get away from the book, like when I first finished it, I was like, oh, this was like really nice. And the further away I get from it, the less I love it, but I still enjoyed it. If that makes any sense. I just think that there are some problems with it. Like, I don't think that I just think that it, needed a little something else. It took a little while to get into. I think it was like a good 100 pages before I was kind of like on the path, which, to be fair, I think I read it just coming off the Empusium. So like maybe I was like ready to get into something a little faster. Maybe I was also trying to put something onto it based on having just read First Light Wins from the Reese's like canon, that I was like expecting kind of like that immediacy, which is not fair. And so I'll own that. It could also be that, like, listen, it's well written, but like, is it Nobel Prize? No. Is that what it's supposed to be doing? No. You know what I mean? So like, again, I just want to like hold space for the fact that like I think I was coming into that reading experience with a lot of baggage. That said, I do think that I did enjoy myself. I don't regret reading it, where it's like one or two of these it was kind of like I would love to have some of that time back. So I really liked it. And I also thought that the conceit that the author employed to like craft it was a very unique and super interesting. So it's written as a memoir, but it's a memoir that has been pieced together from different people in the central like subject's life. And those chapters are written from their pieces, entries are written from those characters or those people's perspective. And then sometimes the person who the memoir is about, like the subject, will write footnotes in response to them, which I think is super interesting. It is. It's good. It's good. It's good. Because the villain that she wrote in it, I think is incredible. Just like so nasty. It's nasty. I also think that like the kind of like inciting incident that like really gets the book moving is so fascinating and nuanced and like tricky because you like your heart goes out to like both sides of the situation, I think, which I think is fascinating. I also feel like it's a really interesting portrayal of like queerness and this kind of like complicated divide that happens within a queer person and coming to terms with yourself and like facing all parts of yourself and coming back into oneness. Like even this like, you know, on the cover where and they talk about it within the book, this like the three shattered three parts of the like the shattered rearview mirror, you know, that idea of like becoming one and feeling shattered inside because of these different parts of yourself and coming one together as a queer person, but then also like, you know, facing life and coming together as a whole person as you're like hiding from other parts of yourself and just different, you know, shards, I guess, that you've like left along the way. So in that way, I think it's done really nicely. You know, I think it wraps up nice. I mean, cried. Like you know, I had a good time. I think, I think to be fair, like from holistically fair, I think I was bringing a lot of baggage into it. So yeah, I did. I liked it. Is a consumable read, which I think is perfect, especially for this story. I think that's what you wanted. So yeah, I would recommend. I enjoyed it. Okay, and this last one, I haven't finished it yet. I know, I'm sorry. I just like the timing didn't work out and I think I have like 1 or 2 days left in January. So like I will have finished this book in January. So I'll probably talk about it in my next month's video, but I couldn't not mention it, and that is Hong Kong's We Do Not Part. I had not originally talked about reading this one. It came up because I read the White Book and loved it. Someone dropped into my DMs and was like, "Oh my gosh, you should read her the book The Vegetarian." They thought I would love it. And then somebody in the comments on like TikTok, I think, was like, "Oh my gosh, Cole, you need to read We Do Not Part." So I was like, "Great." Cuz I had originally intended to finish The Wedding People, but it would have been a hate read and it would have been intentionally sassy. So I was like, why don't we just put that aside and let's read some more Nobel Prize winning authors and let's see what the deal is. And y'all, I'm like, I think I have 100 pages left, which I should sail through. I'm live laugh loving it. Again, it did take a hot minute to get into, which is fascinating. That's been the theme, I think, for this month in general, which is interesting. And I wonder if that pattern is going to continue through the year because and depending on the author, the payoff is different for how long it takes you to get into the book, which is interesting. And again, I think maybe we think about it from a genre perspective, but I would also push back and say that like based on our attention spans, how long are you giving us to get into a book? You know what I mean? Like my girl Olga with the Empusium, like 250 pages, I stuck around because of you, Queen. And like and maybe the stereotypical audience that you know is gonna pick up that book would do the same thing, but like also maybe not because like you're gonna tend to stereotypically be a reader, right? And so you're like, I have other books I want to read. Like, get to it. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody's perfect. Not you can win the Nobel Prize and write a shitty book. Like that happens, right? That's not the case here. But like all of that to say, like, how long are we being expected to give a book a chance until it delivers? The problem with that is that like once you read the final 50 pages, you're like, oh, everything comes into complete focus, and this has been brilliantly crafted from the get, like from the jump. So, but anyways, all of that to say, We Do Not Part. Took me a hot second to get into, but I love it. I love it. It is. Oh, I don't even know if I can talk about what it's about because I don't think I fully know yet, which is why it's so exciting to me. It is, she's a Korean author, and apparently, I think there's an article, I need to find it, that she talks about her relationship with her translators. And like you can tell, these translators are, their relationship has to be so robust and dynamic because it is just such beautiful, beautiful literature. And the way that she uses words, oh my God, I can't. So all of that to say, I don't fully 100% know what it's about. and I might end it. Like, oh, who knows? Who knows where she's gonna take me? But I would say it's about dream versus reality versus life and death, and what does it all mean? And it's about tragedy. There is like this central event that kind of keeps being woven through that happened in Korea, this like huge tragedy that they don't name it in the book. And I have to be honest, I mean, I'm planning to do research once I finish the book. I wanted to get through it first, to name the tragedy, to understand specifically what part of Korean history, which is a blind spot for me, this is referencing. So yeah, but it's fascinating. And like nature is a big part of it, a lot of snow, which is also fascinating because then it reminds me of the White Book. That was like a meditation basically on a lot of like white objects and ideas and like the color white. So it's fascinating that snow also plays a big part here. There's a lot about like nature, trees are a huge thing here. So yeah, I'm intrigued to finish it and I cannot wait to talk more about it. But I mean, even if she fully fails me in the final 100 pages, I think I would still suggest it because, like, up to this point, it's been like so good. So, yeah. Okay. Those are all of my reads for January and like one that's like almost done, but will be one of my final reads for January or will be my final read for January. And listen, of these, what would I suggest? Fourth Wing for the story. Listen, it's good. There's a lot going on in the world. This is a great escapist story, 10,000%. If you're looking for like a fast-paced, like thriller kind of mystery, First Lie Wins, absolutely 10,000%. If you're looking for like literature, The Empusium. Yes, 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 yes. If you're looking for like a good mystery, like it's good mystery, The Plot. Uh, Especially after reading, The Plot. It's good mystery. And then, yeah, something that's like, it's like a nice hug. It feels like a nice hug from a friend that you enjoy with the Three Lives of Kate K. So, I mean, yeah, it's not, yeah, I would suggest it for sure. And then, yeah, We Do Not Part. Listen, have I finished it? No. Do I think you should read it? Yeah, 10,000%. I think it's friggin' brilliant. So, yeah, that's what I would say. So, the ones that I think you can leave on the shelf, the sequel. I'm so sorry to this man. We can leave the sequel on the shelf. I think that you could probably skip if you needed to the Three Lives of KK. If you needed to. Listen, if you were strapped for time, I think you could leave the Three Lives of KK on the shelf. I know I said read it, but this is, you know what I'm saying? Your Dream to Vampires, skip it. Absolutely not. Nope, 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 nope. Not a world where I would suggest reading that. And I think the Murakami, if you want to read Murakami, read one of his other works that has like great critical acclaim. I don't think that one's worth it. So yeah, so like listen, how are we coming out of this month? Like 3 solid skips, and then what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that we really liked. Hey, with 4 that we really liked and 1 that's in the middle, and then 3 we didn't like. Listen, we're coming out ahead. All things considered, yeah. So listen, let me know in the comments which of these you've read. Let me know which ones were on your January reading list. And I cannot wait for us to dive into more books coming up in February. So yeah, join me next week and we will talk more books.